Well, greetings and salutations, test takers. This is a Series 7 guru coming to you from my off-grid studio, getting our kicks on historic Route 66. Let us know what series exam you're taking, where you're joining us from. We're here every Tuesday, kind of a ritual. If you do have a question, once we get the housekeeping done, it's helpful if you tell me what exam you're taking. So you put a SIE or Series 7, it's not necessary, but it's helpful because there's a lot of overlap, and how they test on one thing might be different than how they test on some other thing, right? So if you think about it, that would be helpful. Boom, let's get going here. If you are looking for a free supplement to your paid study materials, there's nothing better than my YouTube channel. What an attitude of gratitude I have for all of you. We just are coming up on 8 million views. August was a second record-breaking month in terms of views. So we had a record July, a record August, coming up on 60,000 subscribers. So the best way to get the best, be most efficient about the channel is to find your series playlist. If you're taking, for example, the SIE, there's 4 playlists. Those playlists are in suggested watch order. Most of the time, the first playlist is a podcast overview of the actual exam, kind of give you the lay of the land, kind of see what the terrain looks like, cover to cover, so to speak, if it was a book. Then there's lectures, SIE cram course, other lectures. Last is practice tests and practice questions for you from various vendors. If you're looking for a particular topic, so that's a buffet, take what you like, leave what you don't. But if you're looking for a particular topic, please use the channel search bar. You put in accrued interest or parity or margin or whatever, and it'll magically appear. It's okay. So, we're going to get questions this evening that I've been asked and answered many times in video and are in the playlist. So make sure you make use of that channel search bar. If you are looking for a paid supplement to your study materials, if you don't have a Kaplan Q Bank, I highly recommend it. Series 7, for example, it's 3,600 performance opportunities with a performance tracker. There's no better Q Banks than the Kaplan Q Banks. With my 15% discount code at checkout, you can get the Kaplan Series 7 Q Bank for $55.80. That discount code works for all Kaplan products and services. If you want to join me, I'm teaching a 66 for Kaplan on September 22nd. Same thing, 15% discount code would work for that. On my booking page, there are some free things. If you go to deantenneytutoring.setmore.com and you go to the class tab, you'll find a link for a weekly Q&A jam session where we can get in a little more depth because we have a whiteboard. So if we hear somebody ask me about a spread, I'm going to answer it, for example. But there, if they ask, I can get a whiteboard and work examples and do that kind of stuff. So if you'd like to join us for that weekly jam session, that's free. You can do so at deantenneytutoring.setmore.com. That's also, if you win the coaching call tonight, you do not win tutoring at a date and time of your choosing, not what you win. If you win, you go to, again, deantenneytutoring.setmore.com. You go to the class tab. You'll see the coaching call for winning weekly drawing winners. And you register. You'll get a link, and then I show up, and we'll talk about whatever you want if you win the coaching call. You are not alone. You're not alone. Besides our community here, we also have a Facebook community called Baby Brokers Doing Hat Tricks. Baby brokers is a term of endearment in the securities industry. And then a hat trick is 3 successes in a limited time frame. We're coming up on 1,600 subscribers or members, I guess. Chats and study groups forming all the time for the various series exams. So check that out. You might want to consider joining that tribe over there. We also have subreddits. We have a subreddit for the Series 6, our Series 6. We have a subreddit for the SIE and Series 7, our Series 7. We have a subreddit for NASA exams, 63, 65, 66, our Series 66. And we have a subreddit for Series 24s, 9s, and 10s. So check out that if you're interested in that as well. All right, so I think that takes care of the housekeeping. Let's see what we got going on in the chat. Series 6, all right, woohoo. Sarat, I wish I keep meaning to show more love on the channel in terms of content to our Series 6 folks, and I just haven't got around to it. But we have a 6 playlist. We have a couple practice exams. 6 tomorrow. Well, Jake, the most important thing is to be confident in the execution of your study plan, Be confident in yourself, and most importantly, be confident in your answers tomorrow. Jake, the days of cramming the night before are over. So what we want you to do tonight is get a good night's rest, because you want to be bright-eyed and bushy-tailed. You don't want to be, when I'm tired, my reading skills are greatly diminished. We want your reading skills in top form tomorrow. And for that to be the case, make sure you get some rest. Acolyte, one of my favorites. Took my first practice exam, got a 70. Love it. That's a great, great starting point. Yeah, watch the videos. I had somebody today I was tutoring. I said, man, you've made dramatic improvement since our last session. He goes, oh, I've been watching the videos. I go, wonderful. The videos are free. Might have wanted to do that before you book tutoring. Right, so just found your channel, was recommended by my IA. Yeah, great. Thank you so much. Referrals is what made the channel number one. There's two things that make the channel number one: content that contributes to testing victories, and the referrals from victorious test takers. All my content is safe for home and work, and I feel honored and privileged. A lot of training directors have no problem letting people watch my YouTube channel when they're at work, and I think that's why we're coming up on 2 million watch hours. I'm not sure, Gray, if that's one person watching 2 million hours of content. I told you we're coming up on 8 million views, so please thank them for that referral. Yeah, there you go. An investment advisor has a great career. I don't know, Gray, what your background is, but I always say, if you're poor and you deserve to be rich, there is no better industry than the securities industry. A quick question. For the 66, I'm reading the book, Taking Practice Questions, using Brian Lee's course of supplement. Love it, love it, love it. What can I do to pass the first try? Well, I think you're doing exactly that. Also, how much harder is the 66? Well, I don't like answering that, Alex, because every dragon to be slayed is a different dragon depending on the dragon slayer. A lot of people find the 7 to be, very difficult, and the 66 not to be so, and vice versa. I would tell you that a lot of times people who have a little pep in their step, they should, coming off their 7 texting victory, have a little bit of hubris, and they get enough overlap where they're studying. Oh man, I know all this stuff already. So, make sure you show respect to that 66 and do the work. It sounds like you're doing the work. The biggest thing that 66 has that the 7 doesn't is about half of it is laws and regulations, what I call law and registrations. And then there's some stuff on analytical methods that doesn't really show up in Series 7, like discounted cash flow, present value, future value, internal rate of return. So make sure you pay attention to analytical methods and then the legal part of it, the laws and regulations. Well, everybody's different again. I think you should get a test date as best practice and reverse engineer. If you worked for me and you just passed your 7, Alex in Louisville, I would have a discussion with you. I'd say, okay, well, how many weeks do you think? I think 4 weeks is sufficient. 3 weeks would be pushing it. 5 weeks, I think, is a little much, but everybody's sweet spot is a little different. But best practice is to get a date. Studying without a test date is not a good idea, because there's no mythical time and place where you can say, oh, I'm ready to get my test date. So get a test date. I would put my test date 4 days. Give yourself a fudge factor, but I think 4 weeks is sufficient for 66. And I'd be willing to say 3 weeks. If you're a full-time studier, maybe even 2.5. But what happened here? I just hit the wrong button. Thank you for all the wonderful content. You are welcome. My pleasure. It's truly helped me pass. Oh my goodness. Woohoo. If you're new with us, we ring the bell. For whom the bell rings, it rings for victorious test takers. The other thing, Marcel, I don't know when you've been with us, Marcel, but now we actually toast the victory as well. Tonight, my toasting beverage of choice is a mezcal that I have specially made, hence the Series 7 Guru. I bring it up from Mexico in milk bottles, jars, and then I put it in this repurposed Patron bottle. And now we do the toast in honor of our victorious test taker. Ooh, been on a little bit of a mezcal kick here lately. I'm coming back for the 7. Love it. Melissa, I feel like starting every 6th class by saying, why don't you just get a 7? Because you're going to need it eventually. Right, so I'd like to know what your practice test scores are. You have, it looks like a base there. I don't know how long ago it was since you took all these other exams. Hopefully not so long ago that you forgot everything. You're starting fresh. But we're sending you good testing vibes. What would that be? 1, 2, 3, 4. Your 5th testing victory. Oh my goodness, that would be wonderful. Huge thank you. You're welcome for helping the SIE 6 and 63. Woo! Yeah, repeat business. I love it. Sean, I tell people I come into your life for a reason and a season. The reason is help you pass your exams. The season is how long that takes to get through those exams. And sometimes I might meet you again years later. I see people in 24s and 9s and 10s, and so. But it's a normal thing that our season would come to a conclusion. I have a lot of people on the channel when they unsubscribe, they tell me, "Hey, Dean, I've enjoyed our time together, our season, but it's over and I'm out of here." I go, I get it. And I have other people say, "Hey, Dean, I'm still going to subscribe even though I'm done with my testing." By the way, subscriptions don't really matter to YouTube or to me. I like it. Thank you so much. We're coming on 60,000, but YouTube's more about viewers and watch time than it actually is about subscribers. Boom, boom, boom. Did I already get that one, Sean? Dana, there you go. Yep. Love it. Love it. I need help creating my data dump sheet. Can you share an options matrix that can easily be written short and then includes hedges, straddles, and spreads? Well, my matrix, Melissa, does not have the hedges on it, but the hedges are separate, right? There are 6. Let me see if I can do this. I'm going to try. I may not be able to do this. No promises. Hopefully you guys are still there. Boom, boom, boom. Let me see if I can bring this up. I'm trying to practice, so be patient with me. I'm trying to make it so I can be a little more, helpful with questions like that. And so let's see if I'm going to be able to do this. Oh, by the way, I'm off grid. If I lose you for some reason, I'm having troubles with my lithium battery. So if I disappear, you'll know I'm working my way back to you. Okay, so let me see now. I can find you guys. Okay, share screen. Can you guys see my screen? I'm hoping you can. Those are the 9 option strategies that you're held accountable for. And so, I think a lot of people think there's a lot of things they're going to get tested on. If you want, I don't know how to do this, but somebody could take a screenshot, or you can send me a email. I'm more than happy. But here is the matrix that I use for options. So what I would tell you, Melissa, is get a sheet of paper, fold it in 4s. We have 2 types of contracts, calls and puts. The action, either buy or sell them. So those are our 4 basic option positions. Now, in terms of the hedges, right, you're interested in the offset. So I'm either interested in a stock, being able to sell the stock, covered call for income, or buy a put for protection. If I'm short the stock, the hedge would be to buy the call. So I hope that was helpful. Like I say, why don't you sign up for the weekly jam session at deantenneytutoring.setmore.com. Melissa, I'm more than happy to develop the matrix with you on the fly on a whiteboard. And now let me see if you guys are still here and that worked. Can somebody in chat tell me, did you actually see my shared screen, or was I just talking to myself? Did my screen show up? Yes, no, chat? Did that work, or was I just talking to myself? No chats? Nobody's going to answer me? Well, maybe we're behind or something. There we go. There's Melissa. So Melissa, as I said, if you didn't see what I just put up, then, just send me an email. I'm more than happy to do that. Acolyte, the answer is, well, let me just take care of this right now, Acolyte. I will do what you need to know for Series 7 right here, right now, and then I'll free you up to go do other things. Right? So the answer is no. Here we go with what you need to know. Let's start with Ginnie Maes. Ginnie Maes are very, very testable. You need to know, do Ginnie Maes pay interest and principal monthly? That's a test question. You need to know that Ginnie Maes have the full faith and credit of the United States Treasury. And you need to know that Ginnie Maes are fully taxable. Whenever there's three of a thing, acolyte, you should be ready for the accept format. Now, if you and I, acolyte, put 25 grand into the same mortgage pool, our checks would look exactly alike. If we both put $25,000 into the mortgage pool, our checks would look exactly like boring, no priority provisions. So, acolyte, if I work in structured finance, what I'm going to do is go to Ginnie Mae and say, listen, I don't want to buy proportionate ownership in the pool of mortgages. No. I want to buy the entire pool. Every mortgage in the pool, I want to buy it all. And Ginnie Mae says, wow. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to carve it up. Structured finance men and women have discovered, acolyte, that you make more selling things by the slice. And you get paid more if you give it a fancy French name. We're not going to get much for snails with butter, but escargot and bird, now we're talking. The French word for slice is tranche. So now I'm going to carve this up into various cascading cash flows. This is a little more interesting now because now there are priority provisions. Now we can allocate, interest rate risk. You don't have credit risk in a CMO because what we're carving up, acolyte, is a pool of Ginnie Mae mortgages. And we can say, would you like the early cash flows, the later cash flows? Kind of fun, right? I saw a guy in structured finance who said, I just carved this mortgage pool into 186 tranches, and everybody thinks they got the best tranche. Now, who would you think gets the least attractive tranche? Institutional investors or Joe Sixpacks, retail investors? Retail, right? So we need to make sure that you understand when you're buying a CMO that you're not buying proportionate ownership in a pool of mortgages. No. You're buying a cash flow from a mortgage pool. And now the interest rate risk can be carved up. The people who have the early cash flows have what are called plan amortization classes. And the PACs, plan amortization classes, those tranches, those cash flows, have more predictability and less risk. It's easier to predict what somebody's going to do with their mortgage sooner rather than later, right? And then the later cash flows are targeted amortization classes. So do we have more or less interest rate risk in a CMO? Trick question. It depends. Some people have more, some people have less. That was the whole point of carving it up, because before we carved it up into tranches, CMOs, everybody had the same. Fannie Mae's have an implied backing of U.S. Treasury, not a direct backing. I think I just gave you every Series 7 question about CMOs, Ginnie Mae's, and Fannie Mae's. Really struggling with muni bonds. Well, muni bonds are there. I mean, there's 20 questions plus or minus. You're not going to have to adjust the cost base unless it's a muni bond at a premium. If you put accretion into my channel search bar, Melissa, literally 15 examples of me walking you through amortization and adjusting cost bases on munis is available to you. So just put that in the channel search bar. I'll give you an example. If, Melissa, we buy a muni bond for $120, $1,200. What I'd like to do is realize that $200 loss whenever it's convenient for me. The IRS thinks that if I buy a muni bond, Melissa, I have other investments. They're correct. You don't take your last buck and buy a muni. P.S. I'm also buying a muni at a premium, which means my coupon is higher than today's return. So the IRS says, well, Dean, you can't decide when to take that $200 loss whenever it's convenient for you. You're going to have to do straight line amortization downward. I got to take that loss and literally be hit. So let's say I bought it for $120, $1,200. It has 10 years to maturity. So it's kind of like the first step of yield to maturity. I'm losing $200 over 10 years. So each year on my tax return, I'm not being facetious, Melissa. I am arithmetically challenged. Somebody offers me a calculator, I'm going to say thank you very much. So $200 divide by 10, not a test term, but what I'm doing is straight line amortization downward called decretion. $200 divide by 10 years to maturity, 20 years. So now let's say then the question, I'll do it in test question format, Melissa. Your client buys a muni bond for $120 with 10 years to maturity. After holding it for 6 years, All right, so now I times that by 6. What is your client's adjusted cost base? Well, 1,200 minus 120, my adjusted cost base is 108. $20 times 6, 108, 1,080. They sell it for 110. Now, if you miss this completely, it's 50% chance, Melissa, you're going to have to do this. That you're going to have to do what I'm setting up here. Mainly it's recognition, but about half the time you might actually have to deal with this. So now they say you sold it at 110. Now, if you miss this completely, Melissa, you're going to say, I bought it for 120. I sold it for 110. I lost $100. But no, if my adjusted cost base, 1,200 minus 120 was 108, and I sell it for 1,100, I actually have a $20 gain. So that is the test question, right? You do the amortization, you adjust the cost base, and then you compare it to whatever your sales proceeds were. Again, for a muni bond purchased at a premium. Most bonds you can do it any way you want. On OIDs, original issue discount bonds, or zero coupon bonds, you'd be doing it upward. Straight line amortization upward is accretion, that is testable. Straight line amortization downward is decretion, not testable, that's called decretion. Taking a 6 tomorrow, but we got a lot of 6s on the call tonight. So, wow. Remember, get a good night's rest. Be confident in the execution of your study plan. Be confident in yourself. Most importantly, tomorrow, Carlo, be confident in your answers. Do not change answers. Take my 65 Thursday. I've used a lot of years in Brian's content along with Kaplan. That's correct. Which ones are scored? Well, gee, who knows? You won't know. So they don't tell you which ones are scored or not. Right? So, woohoo! That's not for whom the bell tolls. It tolls for thee. Yeah, for sure. If you just get Brian's quick notes, by the way, Brian is not here tonight because he's with his significant other at Chicago Cubs game in Chicago. So Brian's a huge baseball fan. So I don't know if he has on his bucket list, Marcel. I can't believe he's not been to New Orleans. We got to get him to New Orleans, but I think he might have a list of stadiums that he wants to, check off before he. I think New Orleans should come before baseball stadiums. I don't know. I could be talking out of school for all I know. But anyways, the quick notes, if you don't want the videos, and don't hold me this because I'm not very good at his pricing schedule, but I think you can get the quick notes with the practice fund for about $40. If you get the whole video series, it's like 100. And Brian has been kind enough to give all of our viewers a 20% discount on his content. And that discount code is Guru20. So that, you could go videos, his quick notes, his practice test is about 100. If you just want the PDF with the written stuff, that's like 40. And if you just want the practice exam, that's like 25. Yeah, there you go. You won't know. Yeah. Failed the 57. Damn, that hurts. I'm glad you bought Nopman. I think Nopman, you'll feel a lot better, I think. It'd be interesting. I don't know how recent the hurt is. So, if it's recent, I would want you to do kind of an intellectual inventory with yourself. You might even do that just by kind of doing a surface of the Nopman material to see perhaps where there's some more depth than STC, for example. But we'll get at this next time for sure. Past the 7 last Friday. Thanks for the videos. Got over the previous attempt. There we go. Love it. Love it. Advanced option strategies, right on. The 2 advanced option strategies are straddles and spreads. Well, they're the recent topics. The test, Melissa, doesn't change like that. Which I would highly recommend, Melissa, is go to the FINRA website, print the FINRA content outline. When I'm teaching a class and somebody says, well, how do you know that's not on the test? I say, well, they're not allowed to just randomly make up things to test people on. It has to be within the content outline. Anything in there is fair game. The heaviest tested topics, and I wouldn't target recent topics. That's a bad strategy. And trying to buy test prep vendors who have questions that mimic the test, bad strategy. Need to intellectually own the content so you're prepared for any draw, recent topics or not. Right? So the Q bank is pretty deep. Now, I would say that every once in a while, Melissa, a question that hasn't been appeared in debrief for a long, long time will reappear. And then, people start seeing it again. But the topics are the same. The test has 4 functions. The 4 functions are find money, prospect. Function 2, open the new account. Function 3, make an investment. The investment component of the Series 7 is 91 questions. And in those 91 questions about investment vehicles, the 3 biggest areas are options, munis, and mutual funds. Those are like 60 plus questions in terms of the Series 7, right? And then the last 4th function of being a broker is what happens after the trade. Marcel, I always tell Mom you say hello. Always, always, always. You guys should be concerned if you're hoping to win the coaching call because, man, Marcel, he sucks up those Wheel of Fortunes, man. I think he's won like 4 or 5 of them. I promise you, if he wins again tonight, it's not fixed. I have no control over the drawing. 90 days past the SIE. That's doable. That's doable. Just passed your SIE. All right. You got your first testing victory. Woo! Woo! Videos help a lot. Yeah, I think there's enough content on SIE on my channel. I don't recommend it. I consider myself a supplement, a bridge from your paid study materials to the test, but I have enough content to pass the SIE, and several times people, will tell me that's what they did. I don't recommend it. I wish you'd go buy a book or do something. What is it with the 6? My God, we got, what is this, 5 6s in that live stream tonight? Man, that just motivates me. I got to give you guys 6s some more content. That's crazy. Tomorrow, my goodness. Did you guys have like a class or something? You all decided to join the live stream tonight? That's crazy. I think this is the record for the Series 6's night before. At least, Jake, you didn't book tutoring the day before. Oh, my goodness. I'm not a miracle worker. I hit the little Zoom link and somebody says, I'm testing tomorrow. I go, oh, my God. How dividends and capital gains distributions from a mutual fund are taxed? I certainly can. So, Sarada, if we didn't have subchapter M or the conduit or pipeline theory of taxation, what would happen is if the mutual fund owns the stock and the corporation makes money, pays taxes, I'll just use me, for example. Let's say I buy Bank of America. And Bank of America has a 21-cent quarterly dividend, so that's 84 cents. Let's say that, Dean has 100 shares. So I'm going to receive $850 or $840 in dividend income, a distribution. Now, when you think about it, Bank of America paid taxes, and then I paid taxes again on those dividends. So that money that Bank of America made and then distributes part of it to me as a dividend has been taxed twice. It was taxed by the IRS to the corporation. Now it's taxed to me as a dividend. If we didn't have subchapter M or the conduit or pipeline theory, what would happen in my Bank of America example, Bank of America would pay taxes, distribute a dividend to the mutual fund. Let's just say it's the Fidelity Magellan Fund. They would know Bank of America. Let's assume they do. And then they would pay taxes and distribute that to me, and I'd pay taxes. The IRS has been kind enough to say that as long as a mutual fund and REITs, same rule for REITs, pass through at least 90% of their net investment income, the dividends from the stocks in the portfolio, that's the D, good way to remember it is DI 90, plus the interest on the bonds in the portfolio, less the expenses, as long as they distribute at least 90, most funds do 99.9, but at least at 90, the IRS will wait and get the money from me, from the mutual fund shareholder. So the dividends are being passed through to the mutual fund shareholders, and they owe taxes on it. Now, some mutual funds say, Dean, if you'd like, we have, very testable, a dividend reinvestment program. We love making up names out of things. Dividend reinvestment program. Serrata, very testable. That's called a DRIP. A DRIP is a dividend reinvestment program. That's where I tell the mutual fund, I don't need the dividends. I don't need the capital gains distributions. Just put those and reinvest back into the fund. The IRS says, well, Dean, as far as we're concerned, you could have got the money, and that's the same as getting it. That's called constructive receipt. So I'm going to owe taxes as a mutual fund shareholder on both dividends distributions and capital gains distributions. Again, the mutual fund wouldn't pay taxes on the capital gains. They could be passed through to the mutual fund shareholder unless they don't meet the requirements. And then they're going to be not a mutual fund, right? So their mutual fund isn't being taxed. The mutual fund shareholder is. Now, the holding period for capital gains, Sarada, is based on the mutual fund, how long they've had the stock. So I just told you Fidelity, for example, owns 10% of Alphabet. They've owned it since the IPO. They've owned it for way more than a year, 20-something years? And if I buy the Magellan Fund tomorrow and they sell the Alphabet stock and I get a distribution, that's a long-term capital gains distribution because the holding period is based on how long the fund has had the stock, not how long I've owned the fund, right? So that's how dividend and capital gains distributions are taxed. They're taxed to the mutual fund shareholder, not the mutual fund, as long as they meet the requirements we've discussed. And remember this idea, whether you reinvest or not, you still owe taxes, that concept of constructive receipt in the drip. How can you contact me if I need advice? Do you charge for that? Well, listen, Jeff, I hate to sound rude, but I had a guy who, was stalking me. And I said, listen, I get hundreds of unsolicited emails every day. And I try to return all my emails, but it's almost impossible. And some days it is. And so, if you're paying me for tutoring or something, I give you my cell phone number and tell you to text me and say, hey, Dean, WTF, I just sent you an email that you didn't respond. Jeff, you can send me an email at dean@guruexamprep.com and put in the heading what it is. Do I charge for advice? It depends. But I'm not in the business of giving investment advice. I'm in the business of helping people pass their tests. And then, Jeff, some people don't understand who I am. I get it. It's my fault, perhaps. But, I'm a retired stockbroker. I have a lot of money. So I don't need to be doing things I don't want to do. This guy was, Dean, you could set up a exam prep company and teach live classes. You can hire more tutors. Who doesn't speak to me at all. So, Jeff, I know you're a loyal person on Tuesday, so it's very likely that I'd be more than happy to have a call with you and tell you at what point you're going to start paying for advice. 66, I think it's too much. I really do. So let's see, 120 days is 4 months. Louisville, I would prefer to move that up, but I want you to be comfortable. So if I were your corporate trainer, your accountability partner, I'm not, but if I were your corporate trainer, I'd probably say, now I don't know if you're taking 66 without sponsorship. But if you're taking 66 and you have a sponsor, then I would, ask your whoever it is that's responsible for that and say, hey, what do you think? I think that, me personally, I would think that's a little long. You get the 7. In theory, the 66 shouldn't take as long as the 7 by a factor of divide by 3 is what I would say, So the problem with having too long a test date too is it's hard to keep bringing up the caboose, and you could very easily forget the stuff that you learned in the first week when you get into the 4th week. So I believe in cramming, getting it done. Start by 65 in 2020. Oh my goodness. Took me 4 times. There you go. I love it, man. Melissa, that is a test of resiliency. And, people invest with you because they like you and they trust you, not because you're a good test taker. One of my best brokers, Melissa, used to go out to tell people, hey, if anybody knows this stuff, it's me. I had to take the damn test 5 times. He always assumed I was going to keep sending him back down there. And I said, man, if this guy gets it done, he's going to be great. If he can deal with that kind of misfortune and still just keep moving, matriculating down the field into scoring position, the saying I like, Melissa, is when you're walking through the valley of the shadow of death, keep walking, keep moving, right? So you can get through it. So kudos to you. And then you first time, I love it. I love stories like that. Love it. On the performance track, what number is a better gauge of performance? The QBank average or the exam average? Well, it depends where you're at in your study execution of your study plan, Volksville. I would think at the beginning, your QBank average would be more important. What I mean by that is Brian and I, in terms of building a study plan, recommend that what you do, let's just take it from ground zero. So you get your SIE book, your 7 book, whatever. We think step number 1 should be read the book. Once you've read the book cover to cover, as close to one setting as possible without highlighting, without taking notes, because how are you going to take notes and highlight? You don't even know what's important yet. You're just trying to get the lay of the land, as I said. You're doing recon. So once you get that done, then you go to Unit 1. You can watch a video to put a dent in the reading, or do the reading and then use a video to consolidate. And then we want you to do 20, 30 question practice quiz. And we want you to get a 75% before you move on to Unit 2. So that would be where that percentage is important. Now we get to Unit 2. Again, we would want you to do Unit 2, watch a video, do the reading, watch a video, your choice. Do 25, 30 practice questions, get a 75%. Do not move on. You do not move on. Now you do a combined quiz of Unit 1 and 2. 75%, move on. Unit 3, video read video, 25 questions, 75, you do not move on. Combined quiz, Unit 1, 2, 3. So now once you get through all your units, I just had somebody today, they're finishing up their unit, their last unit, their last practice quiz, the last combined quiz. Now we do the practice exam. About 7-10 days out now, we start doing intellectual inventories with those practice exams. You know, I think more than one a day. You shouldn't be doing more than one practice test a day. I talked to somebody today, they're testing Monday. I said, okay, so how many practice test scores are we going to get? We're not trying to mindlessly do practice tests. No. We're doing practice tests to identify where we need to do remediation. That's now the answer to your question. That's when those scores become important, because now we use the performance tracker to say, okay, where do we need to go back and remediate? We're also trying to get an intellectual inventory to get a mark to know where we are in terms of margin of safety, right? I would like you in those practice tests to be in the mid-70s by test time. So this guy today, he was in the mid-60s. I said, hey, mid-60s, a lot of people pass with mid-60s. But for a margin of safety purpose, I'd like you to be in the mid-70s. You know, I did a class with 20 people, and we go Monday through Thursday. They do a practice test Friday. They test Monday. I was talking to the corporate trainer, and I said, listen, in this 20-person cohort, 12 of them scored over 70. I think all of them are going to pass Monday. Now, 8 of them didn't score over 70. 6 of them scored between 60 and 70, and there's no reason they shouldn't all pass, but we're going to lose half of them. And she goes, well, which half? We'll save them. I go, well, we don't know. It's just statistics. I said, it's unfortunate because there's no reason for that. If they didn't get wobbly over the weekend, if they stayed dedicated, they stayed disciplined, they stayed organized, and they kept working, they would cross the finish line. And I was so proud of them. They all passed. All 6 of them passed. We had 2 people that got below 60. Now, that's really hard because that means they don't know what they're being asked. They don't know what answers are being offered to them. They have a knowledge deficit, lack of a knowledge base. And I said, it's going to be very difficult for them because they got to do 2 things over the weekend. They got to lay more base, and they still got to, kind of take practice questions. They almost passed. I thought it was a brilliant effort, by the way. They almost passed. Those are exasperating scores, but then they retested and they passed. So we went 18 for 20, and then eventually we went 20 for 20. And so in the beginning, to answer your question, Volksville, in the beginning, I would be more interested in the Q-bag average. Towards the end, 7-10 days out, I'm going to be more interested in that exam average. It's not fitting correctly. Is that, Jacob, what I tried to share on the screen? I'm just now there, Jacob. But did it at least show up, I guess? I hope. That's on my list of to do. I got to figure out how to do that better. So I apologize. I'm trying to figure out how to, I'm still a little worried that if I go grab my screens elsewhere and I come back, I might actually kill the live stream. So not fitting correctly. Oh, well, I tried. I know Kaplan breaks down the average question count per chapter. Shall I expect more than 20 option questions? Well, again, it's random. I say 20 plus or minus 5. And, I have other people who say, Brian thinks 10, 15. And then we have, debrief people who say they got none. I don't believe it. We have people say got 110 of them. I don't believe that either. So it's completely random, but I would expect 20 plus or minus 5. And then remember, some of those acolyte are not strategy. They're just like, when do options expire? When does the option agreement have to be back? If you're struggling with strategy and suitability that relates to options, make sure you hoover up all the points. They're just recognition. The OCC is the issuer and guarantor of all options. The OCC assigns exercise notices randomly. American style can be exercised anytime. About 10 of those aren't really anything to know about options. It's just recognition, right? Kaplan says around 10. Well, far be it from me to disagree with my friends at Kaplan. Well, again, be careful, acolyte, because sometimes people take the test. You go, What test is it? I had a young lady, her name is Sia, and they had Sia in their study group. And I felt like telling them she's doing you guys the favor because she's pretty squared away. And the rest of you guys are a little wobbly, confused. And so I thought she was doing a favor. When they all tested and they were sharing notes, Accolade, about what they saw, I didn't see that. And then she'd say, do you see this? No, I didn't see that. So as I said, be careful about, somebody else's draw or whatever people tell you. You got to go down there and slay this dragon, and who knows what dragon is showing up. But I would expect 20 plus or minus. If anybody has taken the test recently and is in chat and want to tell Accolade what they experience, that just go for it. Basically, starting fresh after failing the 66 a year ago. Help pass the 7. Love it. Woo! Let's see how much mezcal we're going to get today. I don't know if you guys can read that. It says, that's what I do. I drink and I know things. Drink and I know things. Oh, cool. Okay, so you see it? All right, cool. All right. Woohoo. When I really Sriracha get good, I'll put it up there and I'll actually try and draw it on the fly, what I would be more than happy to do with whiteboard. So maybe, we run about an hour. If somebody wants to stick around, I'll try and throw up a whiteboard and see if I can do some stuff on a whiteboard in our live streams. I'm not quite competent there yet. It showed good. Hey, Guru, I just started studying for the 66 and passed the SIN 7 over the past few months. Woo! Okay, let's see. Was able to get a tutor for the 7 and join membership class. Well, I think you're talking about Ken. I don't think I have a membership class. So you might be talking about Capital Advantage Tutoring. You might be talking about Ken. I have classes through Kaplan. I do evening classes on my class tab at dean10tutoring.setmore.com. It doesn't speak to me at all to hire tutors and be spending Fridays and Sundays with people. Work is the last refuge for people who have nothing better to do. And, Charles, I like to smoke cigars and drink scotch and, but if you go to my class tab, I do have evening classes, and I offer them as replays. So see what's available. If there's a particular topic you'd like, this is everybody. You can send me an email, dean@series7 or guruexamprep.com. Tell me what you'd like me to put up as an evening class. I'm more than happy to do so. You can find all kinds of tutoring replays and class replays. I have a whole playlist of class and tutoring replays. Sometimes people are kind enough. By the way, I never put anything up without somebody's permission. But sometimes people are kind enough to pay for the shared screen practice test, for example. That's $1,000. And then give me permission to put it up there. And, please, I had somebody who was making fun of one of the test takers who gave permission to do that. I said, man, stay focused on your own journey. I mean, that person, he was nice enough to share that with you. It's not about him. It should be about you, right? So, but no, I don't sell memberships. I don't sell coffee cups. I got no upsells. Everything on my YouTube channel is free. Failed last Friday at 3,000 answered on Kaplan, need advice. Well, when people get high scores, I'm not sure what you were scoring. So this was an earlier Acolyte's question. I would be interested in not so much you did 3,000 questions. I mean, I'm happy that you did that. But, that's not really the thing we'd be interested in. We'd be interested in how much data we collected from your 3,000 questions in terms of how you were performing. So we don't have any scores to go with those questions. So, and we don't know if it was an organized. Did you do it in the form of quizzes? Did you do it in the form of practice tests? So I would like more information to answer this. My advice would be dependent on more data. Did you do 3,000 questions and quizzes, and what were the quiz scores? What were the practice test scores? When people, let's just assume you're going to tell me that you were getting the scores we would like you to get, and you still missed your mark. Very rarely does that happen, but when it does, it's usually people who have memorized questions and answers instead of owning the concept intellectually, particularly on 65. So that's why I say you got to really kind of understand the content, because whether it's Past Perfect or Kaplan or training consultants or STC or Notman, you shouldn't be worried about a particular question from a test prep vendors. Do you understand that concept? I was tutoring somebody today, 65, and I loved, she had an email with the stuff she wanted to discuss. It was so spot on to the test. And we really just, talked about it. It wasn't, like here's a question on it. Let's just make sure you understand the efficient market hypothesis. Let's make sure you understand fiscal and monetary policy, who controls it, what are the tools available using fiscal policy. For example, I was sharing with her about fiscal policy as government spending and taxation. And Lord John Maynard Keynes was the founder of what calls demand side economics, where that we can stimulate demand through government spending and taxation. And I said, our German friends have had, test question, 2 calendar quarters of declining GDP. That's a recession. They're going on their 3rd calendar quarter of declining GDP. And they decided to use fiscal policy to stimulate demand. And I was telling her, Lord John Maynard Keynes would be very proud of our German friends. They announced that the government's going to spend $1 trillion. Woo! $500 billion on infrastructure, $500 billion on defense to stimulate demand. And then their German friends said they're going to issue bonds to pay for it, which is not a German kind of the Germans are not noted for borrowing money. Wow. Wow. I'm a big fan of Notman Marx, Anthony. Big fan. Brian Marx is a hell of a guy. Somebody was struggling. He does participate in some of my social media on Reddit. And one of the Notman Marx persons were struggling, and Brian actually had him reach out. I said, Brian, you're the only CEO of a prep vendor that would reach out on a Friday night to a struggling student. They're expensive, but I think they're added value. So, I mean, you get what you pay for. They're very white glove service. So I am a huge fan of Notman Marx. I think we had somebody who's taking them for the 57, particularly on those exams, 57s, 24s. I'm a big fan. I'm a big fan in general, but particularly on their principal exams. Just came out of Type Pass 7. Woo! Toast, and you're out. I gotta ask like Chat GPT to come up with a toast for victorious test takers for me. AI is incredible. I was thinking I need to come up with a lecture on dead people, because there's all kinds of test questions about dead people. And I thought, what am I going to call this lecture? It sounds kind of crass, dead people. So we entered it in Chat GPT, and they came up with a title of a lecture called The Afterlife of Money. I go, man, I would never thought of that on my own in 1,000 years. Okay, I was the one who was worried Notman 73 in benchmark. Hey, there you go. I told you Notman, here we go. So Anthony, you're just asked about Notman. I like Notman and Kaplan in this regard. There's a variance in your favor, right? A variance in your favor. So I was not worried that you were not going to pass based on your 73 in benchmark, because I felt that you would pick up points, which is a good thing, right? So that's awesome. I'm so glad to hear that. Justin, did you come close? I will link, Justin, to my podcast episode. My podcast episode is You Failed, Is It Over? Spoiler alert, the answer is no. And it has my 5 recommendations about how to respond to that misfortune. I'll give you recommendation number 1 today, since the hurt is fresh. While that hurt is fresh, I want you to go get that Series 7 content outline on the FINRA website. I want you to do a debrief with yourself. I want you to put each of those items, look at them, and put a plus, 0, or minus. Plus means I had this. This is not something that gave me a problem. 0 means you're at par. Minus means, man, I wasn't prepared for that. It's counterintuitive, but we're looking for the minuses. We're hoping there's a lot of minuses. Also, while you're doing that, Justin, I want you to make notes, because while you're still suffering from PTSD, I'm joking, but while that hurt is fresh, maybe that's going to jot your memory. So I want you also to use that to kind of jot your memories, do that intellectual debrief. That's recommendation number 1. Then you're going to put that down, put it in a file cabinet or somewhere. You're going to take 2, 3, 4 days to refresh and reset. And then you're going to come back to it. And, make sure you get, put your date. Now, by the way, people don't know this, but Justin, you can set your date today for 31 days from today, right? So as long as you don't try and set a date, that's within 30 days, it's not going to let you do that. But you can go 31 out and set the date. And boy, I'll tell you, if I were your supervisor, I'd love that, man. If you came in tomorrow and said, hey, I missed the exam, but I've already rescheduled for my 31st day out, I'm going to go get this thing. I'd be interested, Justin, in how close the score was it. I mean, did you sometimes it's better if you just completely blow it. Just I joke, I always kid people about being a Series 7 Dragon Slayer. Right? I say kudos, Series 7 Dragon Slayer or 66 Dragon Slayer. And I joke, if you get below 60, that means you went into the cave and you didn't even see the dragon. He just smoked you. It was a drive-by. It's a high 60. That's kind of exasperating, but that means you got a good look at the dragon. You kind of know what he looks like. He's still in the cave and you got to go get him, but you got a good look at him. And then remember, just in the random draw, make sure just because you put a plus, you don't just want to focus on the things you were weak on when you return to your execution of your next study plan, because you could get a different draw. Sometimes when people fail twice in a row, that's what happens. They load up on the stuff that they were weak on. They overlearn that, and other stuff slips. So you want to overlearn everything. You want to bring everything above par. Football and basketball. I'm the same way, Marcel. I'm more of a basketball fan than anything, but I like football. We're starting the season. Woo! New season. What's that saying about baseball, Marcel? The most exciting 10 minutes packed into 3 hours. But I'm going to watch all you. Please do. I think it's almost going to be impossible, Justin, to watch all of them. There's like close to 2,000 videos. Probably 1,400 of them are Series 7. You might want to focus on the cram course. That's the equivalent of my 4-day live class. All right. Love it, Tanner. Woohoo! I don't know. Pajamas Boy 3. I'm assuming you have sponsorship. So here's what I might suggest to you. The 66 only works with the 7. I'm not sure if you're in a support role, if you're in the support unit, or if you're in the business unit, the front office or the back office. If you're in the business unit, the front office, and you're trying to get going making commissions. If that's the case, I would perhaps recommend you get with your whoever your supervisor is and say, I want to get into production as quick as possible. Can I take a Series 6? And at least then you can sell mutual funds. I joke about, 90% of what we need to do for people can be done with a mutual fund. I always tease, even if you had a 7 and I were your supervisor and you came back and said, Dean, I know I have a 7, but it was okay if I just sell mutual funds, I would say, yeah, that'll be great. So if that's the case, production, and you want to start making money, I would suggest 6, 63, 65. No wait period. You can do all those as soon as you'd like. And then if you were going to get the 66, I'd like that, get a testing victory. But, don't spend too much time on it. I mean, you got a 6-month wait. So if you choose to do the 66, we've talked about this earlier, I would do it no later than 4 weeks from today. Go get that testing victory. I'm assuming, I don't know, again, if your firm, sounds like your firm thinks you're good human capital because this is your 3rd time. And now you're talking about taking a 66. So they see something in you, obviously. And I see these scores. And when I have people with scores like that, I know they put in the work. I would tell my reps that if you got below 60, I'm not going to send you back down. Because below 60 means you just never powered up on the content. 60 plus means, like I said, you got to look at the dragon. He got you. But you were close. That 71 is really exasperating. But you can retest in January. It sounds like you might be. I'd like more information again. But if you're already working at a broker dealer, my guess is you probably are. And if that's the case, I would just give yourself permission to take a break. Let your brain kind of follow, recharge, refresh. Sometimes your brain can just be exhausted with this. I mean, 3 Series 7s. So I would give yourself permission to take a break, assuming, I don't know what your situation is, but that would, I'm giving a couple different advice based on what I think you might be, where you might be currently. But no matter where you're at, make sure you do that debrief while the herd is fresh. Melissa, I had a really great question in one of the live streams. He said, Dean, what are the rabbit holes not to go down or fall into on Series 7? And I said, partnerships, margin, and life insurance. They're just not target rich. There are more questions elsewhere. All test prep vendors go overboard on partnerships. There's only 2 or 3 questions, and they're very straightforward. How you determine suitability? Well, I would say, Melissa, the question is negative. Nobody who needs liquidity should invest in a partnership. because you can't get in or out of a partnership without the permission of the general partner, right? So suitability would be based on, doing data gathering and say, hey, I have an all cash real estate deal. It throws off passive income. I say, oh, you already have some passive income. Maybe we should be aggressive and go for an oil and gas exploratory program. If we have some passive activity losses, we can offset them. But you're only going to get 2 or 3 questions. So it's not really target rich. And it's not about suitability. It's mainly about GP and LPs. LPs provide the capital. GPs provide the experience. And then the types of programs we have. I just brought up real estate, oil and gas, equipment leasing. We definitely know there are 2 partnerships that provide tax credits, a dollar for dollar whack out of your tax bill. The tax benefit should be of a secondary nature to you. You shouldn't let the tax tail wag the investment dog. That being said, historic real estate and low-income housing would throw off tax credits. So not a big deal in terms of the 7. You tell you missed the 7 because of partnerships, I'm going to say, well, you have bigger problems elsewhere. Past Series 7 on Saturday. Woo-hoo! Take the 66 soon. I currently work for a life insurance company. If I want a career path, what do you recommend for me to take? Well, I think you're in good shape. Are you looking to go to the broker dealers? Dan, here's what I say. I say that insurance agents sell fear. Insurance agents sell fear. Wouldn't life be terrible if stockbrokers sell greed? Wouldn't life be fantastic if I'm duly registered, I can sell both fear and greed? So if I were going to go from life insurance, maybe go to the broker dealer side with more of an emphasis on securities. But again, I don't know about your particular situation. I'm not a career counselor or a guy. I'm just a guy helping people pass exams. So what do you recommend to take? I think you're in a good shape. 766 makes you pretty employable. If you can get, perhaps it depends what route you want. If you're going to get compliance to Dan, maybe see if they'll sponsor you for a 9, a 10, or a 24. And then you could seek a compliance position or a sales supervisor position. All right. Woo! Love it. Past your 9. Love it. Sales supervisor in the house. Love it. I get a lot of gratification from people who, get through this rite of passage, this barrier to entry. I assure you that once you get all this stuff done, life is going to be much better. And now you're going to be able to make a living and help clients, help yourself, help your family. So I'm excited for you, Uncle Dangles. I'm really excited for you. Can I have my can of zinc nicotine pouches in the exam? I don't know, Jacob. I'd call them. They're pretty good at letting you know. I have no idea whether that would be considered appropriate or not. If you have a note from a doctor, it would help. So I don't know anything about Zen nicotine pouches, but if somebody says that's a medication and you're entitled to it, they're pretty good on that. But I don't. Call FINRA. They're pretty good to answer questions like that. It's not cheating to take a break. So maybe you have your locker out there, or maybe you take a bathroom break and go do one of your nicotine pouches things. So I had 1 to 5 pass. Oh my God. Well, this is the danger of study groups. There's a lot of upside to a good study group, and there's a lot of downside to a bad study group. That is, to me, shocking. I think we're missing some data. So, if there was I don't know who that was, anybody in charge of the study group, or your all peers, but the study group should have had an idea of where they were at through practice tests, where they come together, everybody does the same practice test, gets a score, knows where they're at. So I'd be really particular about joining a study group or leading a study group. And I'd give yourself permission at the point you don't think you're moving the ball forward, you're not making progress. I'd give yourself permission to hit the eject button on that study group. And our Facebook community, Baby Brokers Doing Hat Tricks, there's all kinds of study groups formed all the time. I don't intervene. I don't say anything because it's not my business. But, I'd be very cautious of the study group as a member. But I do find that shocking. I don't think that's everybody had a hard draw. I think there's something in the study group that went amiss. Right. So I don't know what that is. Maybe too much fun and fellowship and not enough content, not maybe enough data on practice tests. But no, I wouldn't blame that on the draw. If I was the leader of that study group, or if this was a study group, maybe we're all at Vanguard or Fidelity or something, and maybe this is a satellite study group. If I were the corporate trainer, I would really want to know what was happening. Maybe I would have wanted to check in on the study group every now and again. Say, hey, just thought I'd be check it out. There you go. I like it. Oh, nicotine. Well, I guess, man, I'm an old guy. I have no idea what a nicotine patch. I'm assuming I smoke cigars. So, maybe this is a way of a nicotine delivery system. And boy, I know that nicotine, people who smoke cigarettes, and nicotine is that. My he chews tobacco. And boy, if he doesn't get his chew in, he could be a really problem. Game time finance. I love that. Hey, Dean, went from SIE, couple now taking 65. Love it. Don't have any job lined up, but hoping this will help. I think it will really help. I mean, by having the exams that do not require sponsorship, SIE 65, 66, Series 3, you're less of a speculative bet on human capital, right? So if you come in and you have already your SIE and you have a 65, I, as a prospective employer, say, okay, well, they've demonstrated that they can pass a test. The 65, though, by the way, is very difficult. That's like a baby 7. So that would speak to me as your potential employer even more than your SIE. So yeah, I think it'll be significant. And the 65 is one of the few ones, game time, that can be used without a 7. In other words, you could, Fisher Investments, you could work there with a 65 without a 7. So it's a registration that works without a 7. So I like that. I think it's a good thing. Can you go back into the locker afterwards? I don't know, Jacob. I think Purge Mushroom Stamp. I think she's the one who sounds like she has some experience. We're at an hour. I don't have Brian tonight. So I'm going to go ahead and finish up our questions. If you're sticking around for the drawing, we'll do that as soon as I get caught up on the questions. How does debt service play a factor in revenue versus GOs? Well, debt service is your ability to pay the interest on the bond. So it's an important factor in both of them. But we have a metric called debt service coverage ratio that is associated with revenue bonds. And that's the more important thing. So, Melissa, I would suggest you take a sheet of paper and fold it in half. And on one side, write all the terms associated with revenue bonds. I just told you the debt service coverage ratio is not associated with a GO, it's associated with a revenue bond. They love to say all the following are associated with revenue bonds except, all the following are associated with GO bonds except, or which of the following is revenue, which of the following is GO. So do that when you have your studying unis, take that sheet of paper and write that down. So what else would go on your sheet of paper on the revenue side? User fees, huge. User fees, feasibility study. What else would go on the revenue side? Covenants in the trust indenture, the flow of funds, net revenue versus gross revenue. What would go on the GO side? A taxing authority. User fees, taxes, voter approval, overlapping debt, coterminants. You get the idea. So that is, of all the things you've asked this evening, that is the biggest one. Options and this are big time. Partnerships, who cares? Now, I say who cares, I mean for test purposes. Take my 63 on the 12th at third attempt. Do you have any tips? Yeah, just on the 63, you've just got to do as many practice questions as you possibly can. Kai, I do have a video called The Mighty 90. It's the 63 in 90 minutes. When I teach the 63, it's about a 3-hour course, and I try to get it done in 90 minutes. So check out The Mighty 90 on the Uniform Securities Act. Check out my Series 63 in 60 minutes. Those are 2 videos I would want you to check out, as well as doing all those practice questions. How some folks know their scores? They don't. So you only get a score if you fail, Vanessa. So the only reason they know their score is because they failed. If they pass, they wouldn't know their score, right? So it's pass, fail. If you fail, you get a score. It's not a state thing. Anybody who has a score, you don't want a score. Score means you failed. So that's, if you pass, you don't get a score. All right. Woo-hoo. I think I answered this Mighty 90 on the Uniform Securities Act and 63 in 60 minutes. Those are two videos I would recommend. I do have a couple practice tests. You can watch me do it with a student or do it, hit pause and play if you want to do that as well. Well, it doesn't lend itself well to memorization, to be honest with you. There's not as many memory tricks on the 65 as there are other exams, right? So I would say it's how do we register BDs and agency? If not, why not? How do we register IAs and IARs? If not, why not? How do we register securities? If it's a non-exempt security, for test purposes, that means a corporate security. Unless it's an exempt transaction, we need to register it. Now, filing a notice is a federally covered security. That would be for a mutual fund. So I don't like that you have filing notice here. Coordination and filing notice are completely different things. The two types of registration game time are coordination and qualification. Period. Full stop. Filing is not a method of registration. Filing is a courtesy to the state administrator for a federally covered security. A mutual fund, for example, is the one on the test. Is there an acronym? No, I don't. Yeah, you just have to grind, unfortunately. With you, and help us like if you're not the whiteboard. Well, thanks. I'm not sure I'm going to do it now because we're already past an hour and I've been drinking my mezcal. What retirements have tax benefits? All retirement plans have tax benefits. The whole point of a retirement plan is tax benefits. So all retirement plans have tax benefits. In the retirement plan category, there are qualified plans you get through your employer. Think here, defined benefit, defined contribution, 401k. Think 501c, 403b, tax sheltered annuities. There's one you get on your own. Think here, individual retirement accounts, traditional Roth. Think here, non-qualified variable annuities. But all of them, the money grows tax deferred. So all of them have that tax deferred benefit. There's no way you're getting anything out of these retirement plans that will be taxed at a capital gain rate. Never, ever, ever. Any distribution from a retirement plan of any kind, the taxes are going to be at ordinary income tax rates. Right? So there's no way you're getting anything out of a pension plan that isn't going to be taxed at ordinary income. Now, if it's a non-qualified plan, like a variable annuity, you're going to have a cost basis. Yeah, or a Roth IRA, you're going to have a cost basis, right? But other than that, it's going to be all taxable. Defined contribution plans, the employee assumes the investment risk. Defined benefit plans, the employer assumes the investment risk. How many things? Well, it depends on your exam, Jacob, about how many good things to put on a data dump. You get 2 sheets of paper, Jacob. I think on the weekly jam session, somebody asked me to do a data dump sheet. I said, everybody, you can Google this and a gazillion examples of data dump sheets will come up. But I said, if you join me there, I'm more than happy to get a whiteboard and we can, collaborate or brainstorm and what would be on mine. But that's dependent on your exam. If it was a Series 7, for example, Melissa asked, I would have my options matrix for sure, right? That matrix I showed you, I tried to attempt to show you. I certainly have that on my data dump sheet. If it was 7, I certainly have my teeter-totter or my seesaw. I certainly have that. So everybody's going to be a little different about what they would do. I'd say, Jacob, if I told you could take 1 sheet of paper with it, front and back, anything you wanted, what would be on that sheet? And if you spend some time, you would be able to do that. Wow, I love it. That's great. Well, as I told you, I think, is this, you told me you missed the mark with that score. I think I asked you to come back with that. And I told you very rarely with somebody, I apologize if this isn't the same earlier thread, but I told you very rarely does somebody get an 85 and miss the mark. Very rarely, once a blue moon. When they do, it's usually because they've memorized the questions and the answers rather than intellectually own the content itself, the concepts. So that would be my recommendation if that's part of that earlier thread. By the way, if that's the case, we talked about QBank usage, whether it's past perfect or Kaplan. This is when it's kind of like a sports team and they need a new coach. Because if you got an 85, you need a new QBank. So that you're looking at different versions of that concept, not the same question over and over again. So I would recommend investing in another QBank if you were getting 85s and you missed the mark. Mid to high 70s, high new questions. I love it. So you don't crumble. How any tips on how not to crumble? I do well. 100% pass rate. 100% pass rate. So between now and Friday, so that's Tuesday night, Wednesday morning, Wednesday night, Thursday morning, Thursday night, Friday morning, 5 times. I want you tonight, after we're done, you leave us. I want you to go into your bathroom and I want you to look in the mirror. I want you to say, mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the greatest Series 7 test taker of them all? Will, hoorah! Same thing in the morning. 5 times. Now, if you have guts, Will, I had a guy who told me, I don't know if I believe him or not. He said that when he went into the bathroom to get his nicotine pouch, I'm joking, he went to the bathroom to take a break. He did that at the exam site. Mirror, mirror on the wall. That'd be hilarious, right? Being serious. You've got to be confident in the execution of your study plan. No reason not to be with a 70 or an 80. Those are great scores. You got to be confident in yourself. Most importantly, Friday, you got to be confident in your answers. Well, yeah, well, Emmanuel, same thing. You'd probably mirror on the wall might not work so well with just tonight and tomorrow morning. But it's the same advice. Good night rest. You got to be bright-eyed and bushy-tails. You got to have your reading skills in top form. The days of cramming the night before are over. There's nothing today you could do that would be helpful other than getting a good night's rest. And when you wake up in the morning, be confident in the execution of your study plan. Be confident in yourself. And again, most importantly, be confident in your answers tomorrow. Don't change the answers. It'll be my third attempt to miss. Oh, I hate that. Yeah, I think I just told you what I do. I gave you some video recommendations as well. So you're not alone. There you go. Well, that's one of the reasons I think come join us on Tuesdays. I mean, we try and do testable content, but it's also about fellowship. And there are people doing the same thing in a similar situation as you. I started the channel, by the way, when COVID hit. And one of the reasons is in the old days, we would all be taking this, class together. And if somebody's having a bad day, we could buck them up at lunch or give them an adult beverage after work, and now I think there's a lot of people who feel like they're all alone and you're not. So come join us Tuesday night. Every Tuesday night, we're here at 5. Join our Facebook group, join one of our Reddits. I'm trying to get better at the community here on the YouTube channel in terms of our jam sessions and other things, evening classes and things like that. So make sure you stay plugged in. Well, I don't like Deshaun. I just think the whole premise of your question, aggravates me. Why would you want to only know options and bonds? I mean, no, I would want you to know the entire content outline. If I'll rephrase, with knowing, I don't like the word only. Why would you choose the word only? Well, knowing options and bonds help you pass the 7. Absolutely. Absolutely. I just don't like the only in there. When it comes to arbitration of bonds, I don't think, Melissa, you mean arbitration. I think you mean arbitrage. Arbitration and arbitrage are different things. Arbitrage would be when you notice a price discrepancy between parity and the current market price of the convertible bond. So, I say, oh, this bond is convertible into 25 shares of a $50 stock. This bond is worth $1,250 worth of stock, and I can buy it for $1,100. That is an arbitrage opportunity when there's a price discrepancy. Profiting from price discrepancies, test question is called arbitrage. I doubt you'll see it outside of the Series 7 fantasy land. In the real world, the markets are a little more efficient. But this is based on parity. Parity means equal. So if I notice a discrepancy, I just gave you an example. Parity of the bond, it's 25 shares of a $50 stock. That's $1,250. The bond should be priced at $1,250 or something a little more than that. And it's priced at $1,100. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to short the stock and buy the bonds. I don't think it's a big deal. It's like one question. It's not a big deal. Ray, Ray Mondo, king of the world. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Thank you so much for your super chat. You're one of my favorite students, my friend. Ray and I, we have almost a relationship, not just a transaction. So thank you, my friend. Yeah, 66 Monday. I love it, Ray. Let's definitely do it. Ray, his middle name, I think, is Mundo. And when we were tutoring, I said, that reminds me of one of my favorite cigars, and I haven't smoked it in years. El Rey del Mundo, King of the World. And so I said, man, as soon as we did our first tutoring session, I ordered myself a box. And now I always think of you, Ray. When I go out there on the deck, I light up my El Rey. Like, woo, King of the World. What score or fail on the 65 should I give up? I'm not sure I understand the question. What score of fail should I give up? Well, I don't know. I don't believe in giving up. Boy, we're getting questions. I just don't like the question itself. Like, I don't like the word only. And I think you're asking at what point do you give up? Never. We never give up. Right. So, yeah, why would you give up on a career in the securities industry? So, I think you told me your scores, they're not like you're getting crunched. I think you can slay the dragon. So are you going to walk away and leave the dragon in the cave? I don't think so. I just don't like it. If you're asking me at what score should you fail and give up, I would say no score. I would tell you that as a supervisor, as your corporate trainer, if you got below 60 a couple of times, I'd be concerned. I'd say, hey, what's going on? Well, there you go, Leah. Thank you so much. Firm can't hire till I pass. Any suggestions who's studying solo after working their 9 to 5? No, so tough, man. I'm with you. So carve out study blocks, and you're telling me 9 to 5. So could you give me 90 minutes in the morning as a study block? If you can do that 4 days a week, that's 6 hours. And can you give me 3 study blocks on weekends, Saturday and Sunday? That's going to be another 4.5 hours. That's 9 hours plus 4. That's 13 hours a week. Maybe we set your date 6 weeks out. So I would say I want you to carve out study blocks where you're going to have a dedicated time. It can be an hour. Mornings are typically better for this kind of a thing. Friday, I would just work your normal gig and just, let your brain kind of refresh and reset for a big weekend. That would be my advice. And then remember, it's just try to avoid the energy vampires at work. I mean, if you can, maybe sometimes you can't. But boy, kudos to you. We have a lot of people who do it. It's a much different thing than being a full-time studier. Taking the 7 Thursday, 2 weeks to prepare, study all day at work. 75 is fine. Yeah, Josh, you just got to be confident that 75 is a good score. It is. I'm telling you, I wouldn't lie to you. There's, again, positive variance in the ST score. So I would have a come back Tuesday. Let us know. I can't imagine you're not going to tell us you passed. All right, it's time for our drawing. 79 videos. Kai, I do have a 79 practice test video that I haven't put up. I've been meaning to, and I just haven't got it up. So if you feel free to nudge me and say, Dean, what's going on with the 79 video? You get notes. I'm not sure what you mean, Christy. Yeah, you get 2 sheets of laminated paper to take notes on. Oh, I hate those scores. Oh, that's a tough one. First time tuning in? Well, welcome. I love it. There you go. All right, it looks like it's time for our drawing. We got 2 more. Hey, Dean, so receive stress offerings chapter. So much cap to remember what's the best thing to focus on. Well, a primary market 33 is huge, and then safe harbors under 33 is huge. So make sure you know the cooling off period, the quiet time, tombstones, all that kind of stuff. Top 3 videos. I don't have a top 3. All my videos are in playlists. The playlists are in suggested watch order. The videos are in suggested watch order. You might, Deshaun, put popular videos and see what else people thought was the most popular. Now I got to go get our Wheel of Fortune. So if you want the drawing, stay tuned. I got to put this in. To participate, you have to put into the chat exactly what I'm going to show you on the screen in just a moment. Let's see. What should our word for it to be? I got it. Let's do. Boom. Okay, now let me go find you guys. Share screen. Boom. Uh-oh, what happened to my Wheel of Fortune? There it is. And let me get rid of that. So put pass into the chat. If you would like to participate in our drawing, and what you win, remember, you do not win a tutoring session at the date and time of your choice. That is not what you win. What you win is a coaching call, and that coaching call, let's get rid of that. And you just will get to go to the Dean Tinney tutoring. Let me put that up there. Boom, you go to the class tab, you'll see coaching call for weekly drawing winner. You put that register, and then it'll send you a Zoom link, and then I'll show up and I'll say, what would you like to discuss in your coaching call? Anything you'd like to discuss, that's what we'll do. All right, got 17 entries. Any more entries? Last call. There's 18. Last call. All right, we're spinning. Here we go. Oh, Ray. Leah. All right. Well, Kyle, again, you just go to the deantinneytutoring.setmore.com. You go to the class tab. In the class tab, you will see coaching call for weekly drawing winners, and you just register. So it's pretty straightforward. You can send me an email if you need to, dean@guruexamprep.com, and I'll send you the link to register for your coaching call. All right. Any more questions before we call it a night? Last call for questions. It's all right, Kyle. I'll let you register. I'm not going to kick you out. Kyle, a few weeks. I had somebody who told me they won it 2 years ago. Come on. I mean, 2 years ago, Kyle, I'd probably give you a hard time. Right? So a few weeks ago, not a problem. Just go, just like I say, just go hit the tab and you're welcome to sign up. You missed by one person, Ray. I saw that. Man, that sucks. That's all right. We're seeing each other, I think, what is it, Friday? So we'll just, I told you, if we go over on that session, it's on me. How do you decide 50-50 as suitability? Well, your first response is your best response. I would like to see examples of where you're missing the 50-50. I have an entire suitability playlist with, I think there's 6 videos in there. One of them is a suitability exercise. So go to the playlist tab on the channel. You'll see Series 7 suitability playlist. There's 6 videos. One of those videos is a suitability exercise. Another is a suitability practice test I wrote that I think is pretty damn good. And if we read the comments, people tell me it's pretty spot on. There's a Notman suitability practice test there. So check that out. My email is dean@guruexamprep.com. Let's see if I have a banner for that. It's pretty bad. You can also use this one. It's me as well. So either Series 7 Guru@guruexamprep.com or dean@guruexamprep.com. Whatever you'd like. All right. Anything else? Let's see. Is that all we got for tonight? Let's see. Anything else? All right. Well, remember, inch by inch, your exam is a cinch. Yard by yard, your exam is hard. As Brian, my friend, says, make sure you take the test. Don't let the test take you. We will see you next Tuesday for our next live stream, if not sooner. All right. Bye-bye, everybody. See you next Tuesday. Bye-bye.